Okay, so let's get started. It's 10 a.m. now. Okay, so today we're gonna basically, I decided, before the break, it would be best if we actually went over our first project, kind of go over the code, and hopefully you can see some better coding techniques that you can use for the second project, so you can basically be more efficient. So I know there were some questions if I would kind of show you, I don't really want to say the answers for the first project, but kind of how I did it so you can see some better methods to use for your project if you didn't use them. So we're going to do that, and then I'll also kind of throw in some hints for when it would be good to use a for loop. I'm not going to show you how to use the for loop for the project because, well, that's the project, our next project. But yeah, we're going to go over that today, and then at the very end we have our quiz on for loops. So that's going to be one question and 15 minutes long. And it should be pretty easy, I hope, and kind of, boost your grade. I also had a question on when I'm gonna kind of show the grades better. I know that there was an issue before in Canvas where they like showed the grades as like 1,000% or something ridiculous. So I have to change the way that Canvas shows your grade. So I'm going to change that over the break so it can actually show your grade better. I'm not gonna be able to post the homework today. That probably will be on Friday. But I'll have it, due in at least a week time. So, and I'm going to try to make the homework basically relevant to the project too, to kind of help you out. And let's see, what else? The actual project, that'll be posted too as soon as I can. Probably going to be this weekend, but you're going to have, still a good amount of time to work on that project, and I'll have it due after finals. So if you need to study for your finals, you can do that and then finish up the project after. So, any questions before we get started today? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and again, we're going to be going over the first project to kind of help you out for the second project to hopefully improve your code. Alright, so this is how I'm going to be using MATLAB today, just so I can kind of write some stuff, or copy and paste stuff a bit easier, but I'm in MATLAB right now, so you can open up MATLAB on your screen if you kind of want to go through this with me. And so we're going to be doing it here. So on the left here, I actually have all of my code for the project, and then I'll be typing it in on the right. Okay, so I'm first just going to copy and paste just the importing the data because all of you know how to do that, and we're kind of limited on our time here. So I'm gonna just copy and paste this stuff. Okay, so what we have here, we're just importing all the data, of course. So first we have the global data, so I'm just using the read table function that we've been using all the time. You'll see on a few of these lines of code, I have a comment that says for the instructor. Basically, I had to, actually the global population, that was for something else, but for the California County population, I had to get a spreadsheet for myself that showed the population for each county, and then I appended the population to each county and gave that spreadsheet to you guys. So a few of these lines where it says for the instructor, that's just for me. Okay, so all this stuff is pretty basic though, so you shouldn't have any confusion on this. So I'm gonna kind of skip this part. The only thing I will mention is converting some names to a string. So you see on this line here, I'm converting the country from, I think it was a cell in the beginning, to a string. And then same thing down here, I'm converting the county name from a cell to a string. And then down here for the state spreadsheet, I actually renamed all of the variable names to kind of get rid of the spaces. And for the state / territory column name, I know there was kind of an issue with MATLAB. It didn't like the / that was in there. So I just renamed all of that. Okay, so let's keep going. Right there. Okay. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to go over the countries. Okay, so how I personally started this is okay, so I first started out by getting kind of the range for the testing dates. So I have a section here called testing date data, and then I'm gonna just specify some variables for these relevant kind of testing dates or ranges for later on for the plotting. Okay, so first thing we have the testing range, and again this is for the country, so I'm gonna do glob. So there's a function in MATLAB called global. So you see that my syntax just changed to a pink color. So we can't use the word global because MATLAB will kind of throw a fit. So I'm just going to say glob and then testing range. And then for that, we're going to use the minimum date that we have. So that'll be the first testing date that we have. So min of glob.date reported. And then we're going to go to the maximum of the date reported. Okay, so what I'll quickly do is actually show you the workspace. Okay, so if I open up glob, you'll see that we have a column called date reported. So I'm just accessing that. I'm getting the minimum date that we have here, and then I'm going to the maximum date, and that'll give us our testing range. And when I have a new spreadsheet that I'm importing for a new date, it's going to automatically adjust that testing range. Okay. And then I'm going to do this for the last date of testing, and then the yeah, just that. I thought I did it for the first date too, but I guess I didn't. Okay, so we're going to do last day of testing, and then I'll call this glob last day. And then for this, we just need the maximum date once again. Okay. And then what I have is I'm going to get the index for the last testing date for each country. So by getting the index for the last date for each country, I can then get the relevant data that I want for the cumulative deaths and the cumulative cases that we have. Okay, so get index for last testing date for each country. And glob last date. And of course, we always want to make our variable name something that's kind of relevant for what we're doing. And then for this, all I have to do is use the find function that's going to find our index. And then I'll look at the column that's glob.date reported. And I'm going to say find when that is equal to the last testing date. Okay, so this is going to give us the index for each country for the last testing date. So let me actually show you what that looks like. Okay, so we have our indices for the last testing date. So we see one of them is for row 320. So let's just make sure that that is correct. Go to row 320 and we see that we have November 17th, and that was for Afghanistan. So that looks good. Okay, now I have a new section that's called plot parameters. And I should also make a note that, of course, I'm showing you one way for how I did a lot of this stuff, but of course, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of go about this too. Just because I'm doing it my way doesn't mean that it's the right way, but a lot of these techniques that we're going to go over today, I would recommend doing. Okay, so the first one we have is custom starting date for the plots. So for my plots, I did March 1st, And I did it March 1st because that's when our cases really started to rise. In the first 2 months, I think it starts on January 1st. There's pretty much nothing going on. So maybe for the actual log plot, we could have started it in January because of the kind of log scale that we have. But for the rectilinear plots, we having a start date of March 1st is good. But whatever date you used for your plots, doesn't matter. So I didn't specify explicitly what date you had to use. So if you had January, that would be fine too. Okay, so my starting date, I'm going to do glob plot start. Need to keep an eye on the time. Okay, so glob plot start. So I have to use the datetime function, and then I'm going to specify March 1st. So 2020, 0301, and then I have to specify the format. That'll be the year, the month, and the day. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is make a variable here that's going to be called countries include. So this will be for the amount of countries that I want to include for my plot. So for us, we included 5 countries for the plots, but if I wanted to change that on the fly, all I would have to do is change this variable here. And later on in the code, especially in the plots, I'm going to reference this variable. So if I wanted to update all my plots to include maybe 10 countries, all I have to do is change this one line of code here, and then everything else would update. So I don't need to go to multiple lines to change it. I just have to go to one line. Oh, there's a comment. Okay, yeah, I answered that. Yeah, the starting date used for the project didn't matter. Okay, I'll be more specific for the second project for this kind of stuff. Really, the first project is just to make sure that you guys can write code of your own and get these results. But for the second project, I'm going to actually kind of critique your code more in depth, basically. So I'm going to write out, the deliverables and be more specific this time around. Okay, so we're also going to make another variable for the rolling average that we want to use. So I'll call this rolling day average to use. I'll call this glob roll average equals 7. Okay, and then this will let us have a rolling average of 7 days. I don't think we actually even used a rolling average for the countries, but thinking about it now. But for some of the stuff, I was making my own kind of plots out of curiosity for the countries. So, but we are going to use this same kind of method for the counties because we did use a rolling average for the counties. And then once again, if I want to change this, instead of 7 days, maybe I want to make it like 2 weeks or something. Then all I have to do is change this one line here, and then all of my plots will update accordingly. Okay, so now we're on the actual kind of data reduction. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a table that only has the last date of testing. So, we don't have to do this because we already have those indices, but it'll make it just kind of easier to reference and just to visualize. So I'm going to do glob last day and then underscore t to kind of stand for a table. And then I'm going to use array addressing. So I'm going to access our spreadsheet that's called the glob. And then I'll use the indices for the last testing date. And I also need to put a comma, and then I want to use a colon because I want to get all of the columns for those respective rows. Okay, so if I run this and then I'll open up that table. Okay, so here's the table, and then you see that that we have the last date of testing for every single country. And again, we're doing this so we can just easily access the cumulative cases and the cumulative deaths. Okay, and then we're going to sort this now by descending, so we can actually have them, from the most amount of cases to the least amount of cases. So I need to make a comment here too. Also, make sure that you're making comments. I won't mug you down for the first project, but it's a lot easier for me to look through your code if you have comments, kind of like I'm making here. So make a table that only has last date of testing. And then we're going to sort the table by, I'll just say by descending. So I'm going to do glob last day underscore t. I'm just going to update this table. Sort rows glob last day underscore t. So I'm going to sort this by cumulative cases. And then I'm going to sort it by descend. So we had cumulative cases and cumulative deaths. So I could also, I can make either a new variable here, or I could first make our plot for the cumulative cases. And then I could update our spreadsheet again to sort by cumulative deaths. And then I can make a new plot. But I'm only going to show this part here just because I want to kind of move on to the other stuff. But again, I can make a new variable just for sorting by deaths if I wanted to. Although most likely it's going to be the same countries up top. But that's what you would do if you were going to have both sorted by cumulative cases and cumulative deaths. Okay, so that's it for the countries. That's all the data reduction that we have to do for the countries. So we'll go on to the states portion. Okay, there's a question, how do I change my comments color like yours? That would be in your preferences. So you could go to your preferences in MATLAB and then there's a color option. But what I'm currently using, my colors here are actually set by the text editor I use, so it's a little different here. Okay, so we're in the states now. So for the states, there's really not much to do at all here. Because basically the spreadsheet that I gave you guys, it already had the data directly that we were going to plot, which was the deaths per 100,000. Okay, so all I did was sort this by the death rate per 100,000, and then I did it descending. Then one of the things that we had to do was remove non-states. So what I did is I made an array here, basically a string array, where I listed out all of the kind of non-states that we had. And then I got the indices for all of those non-states, and then I removed them in this line here. So that's pretty straightforward. So that's all you have to do for this. And then later on, we're just going to make the plot. So the states portion was very simple. Okay, so now we're in the county. So we're actually on kind of the more challenging part of the project. Okay, so the first thing I did is I sorted our data by the population. So I made a new kind of table here called county underscore pop to kind of signify that we're sorting by population here. And then if we look at that table, I need to run my code first. Okay, so here we have county pop. So when I sort by this, it's going to basically have it for the last date that we had. Because the population that I appended to the table for you guys, I only put the population on the last testing date. But this is also kind of convenient for us because then we already have this table here sorted for the last testing date, and we can use that for the for some of our plots. So we had that, I think, for deaths. Okay, so that's kind of convenient. And just like I did for the countries, I'm going to have some sections here for the testing date kind of data, and then also for some of our plot parameters. Okay, any questions so far? I know I'm going kind of fast, but I want to make sure that we go over a lot of this before the quiz. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do the testing range. Okay, so I'm going to call this counties testing range. And then you also notice that for a lot of the variables that I'm making, I'm keeping it consistent, you know. So for a lot of the stuff I made up top here for the countries, I started it by glob. So maybe I could actually change it to be glob include. And that's just easier when we look at our workspace, we can kind of readily or quickly reference whatever variable that we're looking for. Okay, so for the testing range, I'm going to do min of counties.date to max counties.date. Let's open up that table. So this table counties, this is the spreadsheet that this is basically the original spreadsheet for the counties. So I'm just accessing counties and then .date. And again, I'm getting the minimum date that we have and then the maximum date, and that'll continually update for each spreadsheet to get the entire testing range. Okay. Let me stop sharing. There's some lag, I guess. Let me try to fix this. Wow, yeah, it's really laggy. Okay. I'm gonna leave the call on my main computer.